So in the next phase of this app, we'll create a settings page where we can customize the flashcards. So we can flip around the languages, hide the opinion, and create an audio only option. So let's go ahead and do that. So in Pages, we'll create a new Dart file. We'll name this settings page, create a new stateful widget, and we'll create a scaffold. So we'll use a scaffold to lay out the UI. For the app bar, we'll use the custom app bar that we have created earlier. Now the app bar expects a preferred size, so we'll wrap this in a preferred size. And now we need to set the preferred size. So size.from. And rather than writing in the height in our custom app bar in various places, we'll create a const to represent the height. Copy this. So here we'll create a const of type double. Set this to 56. Jump back. Import. And now if we go to flashcards page, let's update that with our const now. So just keeping things consistent. Okay, so the next step is we want to navigate to that settings page when we press this icon on the top left of the screen here. So we'll go to the home page and the size box here, wrap this in a gesture detector. So we're wrapping the icon, that settings icon, in a gesture detector. We'll have access to the onTap property, and this function will run when we tap that icon now. So let's use navigator, and we'll push on the settings page. So when we're in the settings page, we can just pop it off again, and material page route as before, and point to the settings page. Okay, so let's test this. All right, cool. So we're in the settings page. We can pop that off and jump back in. Now we do have one issue, and that is the icon is not showing, and that is because that icon is using a hero animation. So we need to update the tag in the hero animation. So if you look at our custom app bar, this is using a hero animation, and its tag is based on the topic, and we set that in Flashcards Notifier. So this is an easy fix. If we go to home page, we can just update that and set the topic as settings. So therefore we won't get an error. So we'll use provider of import provider. We need to set listen to false. And then we can set topic and pass in the topic of settings. And there should be an image in the app named settings. So assets, images, settings. Okay, so let's run that again. So let's navigate to the settings page, click the icon, and cool, we've navigated now to this new page. Close all this. Now the icon is looking a little bit too big, so let's update that. We'll make that say 16. So put some padding in the custom app bar, and that looks a lot better. Okay, let's jump into the settings page. So now we can start building out the body. So let's create a series of buttons to represent the different options, and we'll stack these on top of each other. So we'll use a column, and the button that we'll use a switch list tile. So let's hot reload. Okay, so we have a switch list tile, so therefore we can toggle the different options on and off. So let's look at value and onChanged. So onChanged firstly, when we toggle the switch button, the onChanged will run this callback and will get passed in the value, which will represent whether it's been toggled on or off. But to actually update the state of the switch list tile, we need to rebuild the widget and update the value. So we'll pass in true or false based on whether it's toggled on or off. So we'll come back to this at the moment and build it out. But firstly, let's outline the different options that we'll have. And to do that, we'll create an enum. So we'll create an enum and we'll name the settings. So to create an enum, use the enum keyword, name the settings, and the first setting will be English first, the second setting, show pinyin, and the third setting, audio only. So we now have three different options which are encapsulated nicely in this enum. So now we need to update the state of our switch list tile when we toggle this button and also notify the rest of the app. So to do that, we'll create another provider. So inside of notifiers, we'll create a Dart file and we'll name this settings notifier. We'll create a class, settings notifier, and this must extend a change notifier. Okay, so now let's set up the provider. So here we have multi-provider, so we can just add in a new provider, create one nice and easily by adding it in here, and that will be the model class we just created, settings notifier. All right, cool. So we've now created that. Let's jump back to the notifier. So in this settings notifier, we want to track the different options and whether the different options are turned on or off. And a good way to do that is by using a map, where we'll have a collection of key value pairs. So for the key, that'll be our settings, the enum we just set up, and then for the value, that can be of type bool, so on or off. And we'll name this display options and import that library. Okay, so now we can populate this map with our different settings. So the first one is settings and English first. So that's our first key. Our key must be of type settings. And then the corresponding value, let's set that to true. So by default, English first will be set to true. The next one, settings.show pinyin, we'll set that to true too. And then the last option, audio only, we'll set that to false by default. So now we have this variable of type map where we can track the different options and the corresponding value. So whether the button has been switched on or off. So now let's create a method to update each of these values. So update display options. So we need to pass in two arguments. The first is what is the settings we want to update, and the second is do we want to turn that true or false. So required settings, we'll name this display option, and required bool, and we'll name this is toggled. And because we're dealing with a map, we can write display options and use the update method. So this will look for the key value pair based on the key. So we'll pass in the key, which will be the display option we pass in, and then we can update the value, which will be the value that's passed in. So is toggled. So this will look for the key value pair based on the key and update the value. After we've done that, we need to notify listeners. And lastly, we'll create a method to revert back to the default settings. So we'll name this reset settings. So we'll update this. So each one, settings, English first. So by default, the value will be set to true. Show pinyin, true. And the last one, audio only, false. And notify listeners. So we now have settings notifier set up, which will track the state of our switch list tiles. Now let's go back to the settings page and update. So when we switch the toggle on or off, this callback will run, and we need to communicate this change to our settings notifier. So the first thing is we need to wrap our switch list tile in a consumer from provider. So as before, and now the type will be settings notifier. Okay, so here, when this runs, we can call that method we just created, update display options. So in this case, let's update the first switch list tile. So in our switch list tile, let's create a title. We'll say English first. And our display option will be settings dot import our file and English first. And we'll update that. So what value do we pass in here? That is the value that's passed into our callback. So we'll pass that in here. So now we've communicated that change to the settings notifier. We actually need to rebuild the switch list tile so the UI reflects this change. So to do that, we'll first use Notifier. Then we'll select display options. So we have access to all of the entries, all of the different entries in our map. And we want to find the first where the key is equal to settings.English first. And we need to pass in the value of true or false. So here we can select value. So let's run that and see how it looks. Okay. All right, awesome. So we can now switch this on or off, and we can see it stays in position. So now we can add in the other buttons. And let's refactor this out so we're not duplicating code. Cut this. We'll create a new subfolder, settings, and we'll put this in a new Dart file. Import everything that we need to. So we need to pass in the information to the button about what button it is. So we'll do this by our enum, and we'll name this display option. So this is a required argument. And rather than the text saying English first, the text will now be display option, and for the time being we'll use the name property. So here where the key equals English first, so where the key equals display option, and on changed, this needs to be updated to display option. Okay, so now we've got this going, let's jump back to settings page, import our new file, display option. So settings dot English first. Copy this. The next one will be settings dot show pinyin, and the last one settings dot audio only. Okay, cool. So we now have these three switch buttons, and we can toggle each of these on or off. So if we go to the settings notifier, we could create a print function here just to see what's happening. And we'll say button display option dot name and is toggled. So show pinyin is false, show pinyin is true, audio false, audio true. Okay, cool. So the buttons are working well. We can update the state of the buttons really easily. And we can just add in new options with that map. Okay, so next is we need to update the look of the buttons. First of all, we're using the enum name, and that doesn't look too good. So what we can do to update this is we can create an extension method on the enum, which will allow us to easily create some text here. So to do that, we'll go to methods. So to create an extension, we use the extension keyword and then give the extension a name. So it's not too important, but we'll name this settings to text. And we'll apply this on our settings enum. And we'll create a method toText that we can call on our different enum values. And then because we've got different values, we'll use the switch statement, and we can match this against the different enum values by using this keyword. So the first option will be case settings dot, and need to import the library here. So settings.English first, and now we can return any string that we want. So I'll write show English first, and we need to return this, and we're returning a string from this method. All right, cool, so we have the first one done. Let's create our different option. Settings.showPinion, return showPinion, and our last option is audio only. So we've created this extension method toText on our enum. So now we can easily call this method, and either one of these texts will appear based on what enum value we have. And I'll just update this name to Pinyin. So now let's test this out. So we'll go to switch button, and instead of calling the .name property, we can now call this new method we've created toText. So this is really easy now. So let's see how that looks. Cool. So now these names look a lot better. Let's also update the color of the switch tiles so it fits the theme of the whole app. So as before, we'll jump into themes, and we'll use switch theme and switch theme data class. We want to update the thumb color. We need to do this using the material state property. And this will be of type color. And now we can pass in the color that we want, which will be red. We need to do a hot restart. Cool. So that color is looking a lot better.